Hello, I am Novi Antan and welcome to iHomeschool PH YouTube podcast, where we'll talk about what really matters most in our homeschooling journey. If you choose to listen in this podcast, maraming pong salamat at piliin niyo pong makinig sa amin. And if you're watching, hello! Hello! Kamusta na po kayo? But this topic for today's podcast, YouTube podcast, I'm so excited because we're going to talk about being a wife. Sometimes as we homeschool or as we get prepared for the new year, no, over the summer, we let our jobs as mothers and teachers, as chefs, as housekeepers, chauffeur pa nga minsan, stop us from spending time with our husband and showing them that they are important to us and that we love them. But being a mom is a very hard job, and being a homeschool mom is even harder. And if you have, syempre, sometimes our kids, no, may mga special needs dyan, that's add an extra element and stress and difficulty, di ba? But it's important for our children to see what a healthy marriage looked like. And I realize there are more and more single moms who homeschool today. And I honor them. I'm so happy for them. Talagang hindi ko kaya yon. But I think most of us hope that if our children choose to marry as adults, we need to be a role model of a happily married life. Having a happy marriage while homeschooling is possible? Yes, it is possible even though we're busy with all that stuff. Yes, our lives is often stressful, but we don't have to sacrifice our marriage. So today, I invited a very good friend. Let me introduce to you my dear friend, okay? She's an educator, a home education consultant, a learning coach, an entrepreneur, a published author, an international trainer, speaker, consultant, and an artist. But her favorite role is that of a wife and a mother. She is married to Gumang Dosel from Northeast India, and they are blessed with a son, Lian Ed, and a daughter, Josephine Himig, whom they have been homeschooling since 2012. So, she has been serving as an advisor to homeschooling families based in the Philippines and abroad. Wow. She has teaching experience from pre-K to graduate school level in the formal context, in the community setting, and in home environment. Her vast experience in education had led her to be a favorite speaker in teacher training programs and parent equipping events across Asia prior to the pandemic, which have now transitioned to webinars, online learning platforms. She and her husband, Mr. Gumag, co-founded Arrows and Quivers Family Development Incorporated, which manages the Arrows and Quivers Homeschool in Davao City. So mga taga Davao, under her mentorship, the Arrows and Quivers teams help schools and families adapt to the next normal to make learning from home and meaningful and strategic ways. So let us welcome our dear friend, Grace Gaston-Dousel. Hello, my dear.
Hi, Novi.
Hello,
So good to be
hello.
with you.
Yeah, kamusta na sa Davao? From Antipolo to Davao, di ba?
Oo, we cover nationwide.
Oo nga, ang galing din,
Oo,
no?
okay naman. We're still enjoying our eternal sunshine and eternal summer.
Oo nga, yan ang sinabi mo nga kanina while before we start eternal. Ganun ba talaga ang Davao? But anyway, one of my best experiences
Oo,
in
we
Davao.
like the sunshine. Yeah. Mm-mm.
Oo. My favorite place there is yung Eden part. Where is
Oh,
that? Is that
yes.
near your area?
Not quite near where we live. But unlike Manila, our traffic is not so bad na, it takes forever to get to a place. So somehow, I feel like things are near when we go around because, well, although traffic is starting to get heavy, we've become a city na rin talaga. But yeah, things are still manageable. Eden is also one of my favorite because, it's cooler up there.
Oo
But
nga.
there are lots of other places you should visit when you come here.
So,
Marami
but
pa.
how's the pandemic? I mean, konti lang naman bang affected sa area nyo?
No, actually, the Davao region has a very high batting average ngayon.
Really?
Medyo
Oo.
kami yata ang top notcher. So, that's why we are actually back to MECQ as of the moment that we're doing this.
Mm,
Praying that things will get better, and but thankfully, people are, of course, people have wised up. People are wising up.
yes,
Masks
yes.
and taking precautions. Uh, but life has to go on. Life has to happen. Life has
Tama.
to continue. People have had to go back to work.
Mm.
So we just need to be careful.
Yeah. So, are you planning also to vaccinate? Iba na yung term natin, no? Oh,
Well, thankfully, there are an increasing number of vaccination centers now. In fact, some of my friends nakadalawang doses na, no. So, my
oh.
parents who are seniors, nauna na sila. Ako personally, actually, the thing was, if you followed my journey last year, I went through thyroidectomy last year because I had
Oh,
Hashimoto's disease. Thankfully, it was not cancer. Actually, there was a cancer threat.
thank you, Lord. Yeah.
But thankfully, the biopsy, the result revealed it's Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. So I have to get clearance first from my doctors so that if I could really get vaccinated, because that's one of the requirements. Kung may autoimmune disease ka or any other comorbidities, you have to really get that.
Mm,
But our lives are in God's hands, so we'll go. We'll live one day at a time. We'll see
yes.
one day.
And I'm so glad you're here with us, sharing your
Oh
life.
yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
But anyway, para lang magkaroon sila ng malaking perspective about you. So, how did you start homeschooling? Paano ba to? Paano ba napunta ang homeschooling in your mind? That was 12 years ago, am I right?
More than.
More than,
Sorry,
okay.
no, almost. Almost. Kasi 2012, it's only 2021. Almost a decade. Hindi pala
Okay.
more than 12 years.
Okay.
Alam mo na hindi ako magaling sa math. At yan ang
Pareho
ina-outsource kong
tayo,
subject.
pareho tayo. So,
Yeah, but
paano ba?
it feels like it's been a long time. At the same time, it feels like I'm still learning how to do it. Alam mo yon, yung parang feeling mo ang tagal-tagal mo siyang ginagawa, pero at the same time parang inaaral mo pa rin siya paano siya gawin. Actually, it wasn't like an easy decision to make. It took us 4 years to
Wow.
decide to homeschool. At in the beginning, I was already enamored to the thought of homeschooling because I have two good friends who were really so ano ba tawag mo dito, so much of advocates of homeschooling. So, and they were telling me, kasi back then we traveled a lot. We would do work in different parts of Asia, and at that time my kids, especially my eldest, was in a progressive school. Okay, it was a good school, no, wala yung mga sad experiences, bullying and stuff. It was a good school that we all loved. But the difficulty was that because we traveled, my husband and I would travel for our work and ministry back then, naiiwan yung mga bata. Kasi nga, regular school so they cannot miss school. So at that time, I was already thinking, sabi ko, this cannot be, no. Although mas naging stay at home ako nung naging dalawa na yung kids namin. So I had then a preschooler, and then my baby, si Himik was still a baby. So Lee and Ed was a preschooler, Himik was a baby. And then my two friends were telling me, why don't you consider homeschooling? Kasi for the kind of lifestyle that you have, you can bring them with you when you travel, when you go for a ministry, when you go for your business consultancy um, around the country or around Asia. And then, because at that time I was also teaching in a graduate school, they can even come with you to the classroom and they can just sit in one corner. Sabi ko, noong time na sabi ko, okay, I am a professionally trained teacher, but then, my orientation was classroom. And here are my two friends telling me, mommy friends telling me, there's another way of learning that can be done. So parang intriguing, di ba? So what I did was I went to a seminar. Nung time na yon, hindi pa kagaya ngayon na parang left, right, and center, there are
O, di
seminars.
ba?
Diba? At saka walang online dito sa Pilipinas. Nothing of the sort. when I would research on the internet about homeschooling, I always land in the US or some far country. So finally, I got a hold of one seminar, and I sat there, and I was just like thinking, this is for us, you know. If I had been teaching other people, and other children, because I taught also in regular school at one point, bakit hindi ko pwedeng turuan mga anak ko? That's what I thought. I could teach my kids. But the thing was, I wasn't with my husband then. You know, he was on a work-related trip. So when he got home, I was just like, lively and telling him everything. And, I learned this, I learned that, and maybe we can homeschool. But, he could not wrap his head around it. And I understand because my husband is from India. Okay. So, and he was schooled in a very traditional system. British system pa talaga
Yeah.
yung pinalo. And
Naku,
then
major trad yan.
yes, and his father was a public school teacher. Okay? So parang talagang homeschooling. It's so out of this world. So in short, he could not absorb what I was, raving about. And then at that time also, my son was 4 years old, and I asked him, anak, I said, do you want to homeschool? And then he said, homeschool? You mean my school will be at home? I said, yes, you're so smart, my son. Ganyan pa ako. Then isip siya. He was really thinking hard, long and hard. And he said, so who will be my teacher? I was so proud. And he said, me, I'll be your teacher. Alam mo, he looked at me and he said, no way. So that really shocked me because that says a lot about my relationship with my son. He wouldn't want me to teach him. So I was really downhearted. My
Oh.
husband wasn't into it. My son did not want me to be his teacher. So I said, I may be a teacher, but, homeschooling may not be for us. So I dropped the idea.
Mm.
But after 4 years, a lot of things happened. The school where my son was enrolled in raised the tuition fee. At that time, naging single income family kami. We couldn't handle that jump in the budget. And so my husband said, let's look for another school. And I submitted and I researched. And thankfully in the community, there's another school there. Good curriculum, values were the same as what we have as a family. So long and short of it, we enrolled our kids. Both kids this time, dalawa na sila. But there was one day when my son came home and told me, Mama, my teacher does not allow us to go to the bathroom.
Whoa.
Yeah, my teacher does not allow us to go to the toilet. Even after you ask for permission, she doesn't allow you. Yes, Mama, she doesn't. Sabi ko, okay, no worries. I'll go to your school tomorrow and I'll talk to your teacher. Siyempre, natakot ako, no? Kasi paano kung magkaroon ng kidney issue and whatnot yung bata.
Yeah.
And then my son just proudly said, oh, no need, Mama. Don't worry. I took care of it. I took care of the problem. And I'm like, how did my 8-year-old son, take care of such a problem? So I said, what did you do? And then he said, I sneak out. I sneak out of the classroom. I go, and your teacher did not know? I said, no. That sent red flag signals to us. Because first of all, yun nga, it might be unhealthy for my kid. Second of all, security-wise, he's loitering around without teacher knowing. And then third of all, our son was beginning to think that sneaking out of class and not telling the teacher is okay so long as he doesn't get found out. And that's a value system issue. So my husband said, let's look into homeschooling again. So after we attended another seminar, my husband finally attended and then he said, yes, we'll do this. So yun, we pulled out the kids middle of the school year and then started homeschooling. That's a long story to a short question, but yeah, that's...
Pero grabe lang. I mean, wow. Ano kayang reason ng teacher bakit di siya
Alam mo, I never
sa
found out.
CR? Diba kasi ako talaga pupunta ako doon, teka muna. Bakit ganun? 'Di ba? Kasi puwede talagang magkasakit yung anak natin. Wow.
Yeah, oo. Hindi ko na rin na-find out, eh, kasi parang siyempre uminit din yung ulo ko tapos sabi ko, "I have to compose myself."
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
true. But anyway, you have a very good reason na to homeschool, no, at that time. And iba-iba talaga iba't iba rin talaga how God will approach us in our decision making process, especially in doing homeschool. But then again, with that end, dahil nga sinabi mo na yung background ng asawa mo. Kasi ngayon, with our topic today, I know that everybody is trying to prepare for their homeschool year, and
Hmm,
I
yeah.
know that, very busy. Alam mo yon, ito anong gagawin ko. Alam mo yun, kung last year man, medyo bago sila. I mean, ngayon, hanggang ngayon, siguro second year, nangangapa. Do you remember your second year? Nangangapa pa rin ako ng second year ko, no? Pero sometimes with all of those things that we need to do and the different roles that we have, sometimes we tend to forget our husbands.
Yeah.
And I do believe you're one of the right person to talk about this. Ikaw pa, different culture pa kayo ng husband mo. That's not an easy, process to adjust with. So, how do you manage that? How do you, keep yourself in such a way na being a wife and at the same time homeschool your two kids and with all the things that you do? How did God process you? Siguro, yung start muna.
Ah, naku, ang lalim na tanong niyan, Novi. Lalim na hugot. Um, but at the top of, on the top of my head, first thing that came to my mind, sorry, excuse me, as you were asking me that question, one word was coming to my mind, and it's faith. It's faith. Faith in the Lord. Unang-una, it was faith in Him that led me to marry my husband. Like you said, we're a cross-cultural couple. Contrary sa mga napapanood natin sa mga pelikula or even dun sa mga fairy tale stories na naririnig natin, cross-cultural marriages have their own set of challenges. Lahat naman ng marriages meron. I'm not saying na ours is more special than others, no. But there's another level of adjustment that you need to deal with when you are marrying somebody from another culture. But essentially, when you think about it, lahat tayo, when we get married, it's like we're crossing cultures. Kasi yung asawa mo naman came from a different family background, came from a different cultural tradition that's different sa kinalakihan mo, different from what you grew up with. But yun nga, the basis for which I married my husband, Mang, is really faith. Prayed about it. I prayed hard about whether, this is the man. By the way, he is my first boyfriend. Yun pa.
Wow!
Oo. Yun, ganun talaga yung ano ko no, na parang, not that I'm such an idealistic person, but it's just that when I was single, kasi I was just thinking, I don't want to waste my time going from one relationship to another. I'd rather do other things. I'd rather travel, study, explore the world or whatever than spend my time and emotions and energy jumping from one relationship to another. So I prayed. I really asked the Lord, na God, yung first boyfriend ko, yun na po sana yung maging asawa ko. Parang hindi na po ako mag-aksaya ng panahon. That's just me, okay? That's just my preference and my opinion. So when the Lord gave Mang, and by the way, that story is here in this book called True Love Weds.
Yes.
Yan. Later I'll show you
Yes.
again the photo of the book. But so the journey to that really was birthed out of prayer. And so when we got married, we understood that it's not just the two of us in the marriage. It's three. It's a cord of three strands cannot easily be broken. And there has to be a third party in your marriage. And that third party is the Lord. Christ to us is the third party in our marriage. Para pag hirap na, alam mo kung kanino ka pupunta. Hindi ka pupunta dun sa asawa mo para awayin siya. You go to God. Sabi ko nga sa husband ko, whenever I'm having issues, isusumbong kita kay God. Ganoon. Kasi pag sinumbong ko kay God, things get resolved better. But when I take matters into my own hands, the argument takes longer, mas matagal yung tampuhan, and parang mas lalong hindi nagkakaintindihan. Especially with us. I mean, in the early years of our marriage. Imagine, iba yung language niya, iba yung language ko. The only language we speak together is English. And mind you, he speaks British English, I speak American English.
Yeah, iba ng tono, no, talaga.
Diba? And there's always something missing in, parang lost in translation along the way. So without faith, no, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
I would say
I
that's the
totally
main
agree.
foundation.
Yeah. That's a great foundation. Totoo yun eh. Yun naman talaga yung bottom line. No? We cannot do anything apart from God. And I totally agree with you, Grace. But then again, nung nag-homeschool ka na, syempre,
Mm.
that's another set of issue na naman, di ba? Na adjustment,
Yes.
major adjustment. And with the background of your husband na masasabi natin, hindi siya 100 totally, percent agreeing with you with that, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
at
like,
the beginning.
yeah, magta-try muna tayo. Sige, let us see how it goes. So,
Right.
ikaw parang in your sense, do you think that na parang, I have to prove this, that the decision is right? Di ba? Parang ganon. Have you thought of that ba? Meron ka bang ganong
Well,
journey?
actually, when we first talked about homeschooling and he said, nah, it's not for us. I dropped the issue. I decided to submit to him. I did not push it,
Wow.
Although in my heart, that was really my desire. I was hoping na, he would get the same fervor and,
Yeah.
catch the same vision that I caught after listening to that, to that seminar. But then, when I heard him say na parang, no, it doesn't seem like it's gonna work for us, I had to trust him.
Okay.
I had to
That's good.
trust him and I had to submit to him. And I just prayed and I just said, Lord, this is what I desire, but if my husband is not into it, then I'll take it as something that maybe it's not for us. And this is your will. Because I consider my husband as the leader of the family. I cannot do a coup d'etat and all of a sudden biglang, hello, honey, I'm homeschooling the kids and I'm all geared up for it. Kasi, ang mangyayari nga, if I pursued it that way, di yun nga, lagi ako magpo-prove. I have to constantly prove myself and I would always be pressured to make the homeschooling work. So, I did not push the issue. Until nga, parang the Lord was the one who orchestrated events. It took 4 years. It took 4 years for him to reach that point where he was the one who actually said, let's consider homeschooling again. So when he did that, when he said, let's consider homeschooling again, I took it as a cue also from the Lord. Now this is the time. So, Novi, I always believe in God being a God of perfect timing. And sometimes we think na, kasi narinig na natin to or pinag-aralan natin, we did our own research and all that. Now, let's do it now. Hindi may season. My season. So even now when I coach homeschooling families, I always ask them, what is the season that you are in as a family? Because that matters in homeschooling. So if the season for you is that the husband is not with you in the homeschooling journey, then maybe you should hear him out. Hear him out and then submit first. Diba?
That's
It's
really
hard. It's
good.
hard.
That's really good, no? Grace, kasi, well, I'm sure you also encountered parents like that you coach,
Mm.
no? Na talagang hindi nag-agree yung asawa, no?
Spouse, yes.
Oo. Regarding homeschooling journey. For them, it's like, ba't natin gagawin yan? Yung parang, it's really clueless. Well, depending of how, really talaga one factor is how the parents brought them up and the concept
Yes.
of educating your child. But then again, yes, I totally agree with the space, and I totally agree in, sometimes kahit na alam nating, alam mo yun, medyo alam mo na tama ka. But then
Mm.
again, importante yung blessing ng asawa mo eh. There,
Amen.
there were there were instances na kahit di homeschooling, we have a lot of decisions that we make. But then again, iba talaga if you agree. There's a power in agreement. But then again, ang ganda ng
Right.
sinabi mo that we need to wait. We really need to wait for God's timing. And sometimes in the waiting period, hindi lang naman yung asawa natin yung may revelation, but tayo rin, 'di ba?
True. Mm-mm.
And eventually it would be
Mm-mm.
more easier, at least hindi hindi tayo naging hasty sa decision natin.
Yes.
But
Yes.
there are some parents that I also counsel na moms, or sometimes vice versa. Yung babae ang ayaw, pero yung
Mm.
lalaki naman yung may gusto. So, iba
Mm-mm.
din naman yun, di ba?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
talagang away nangyari dahil nga, hindi,
Right.
homeschool ko yung anak ko, yung gano'n. So, it won't, if you start to make a decision, that is a major decision, di ba?
Right.
So,
Yes.
if it's not with a blessing with your husband, and definitely, with that word submit, no, Grace? Gusto kong i-ano mo lang yan in such a way. Baka sabihin, no, we submit? Ha? Magpapaalila ako sa asawa ko? Hindi tama kasi hindi ba, sa research ko, blah. Pero maybe you can be able to expound that a little bit. Ano ba talaga yung sabihin
Mm-mm.
ng submit?
Mm-mm. Um, alam mo, tagal ko ding inaral yung word na yun na submit kasi hirap din ako dyan. I have a strong personality. But my husband's personality is stronger. Kaya nga
Ay,
yata
kaya
kami
bagay kayo.
pinagtapat.
Bagay na
Oo.
bagay.
I always call my husband the alpha male talaga, in the sense na, he he's really a leader, and that's something I thank God for. And he is one person that I really respect. Um, Submission to our husbands really is all about respect and the love that they give us is even sweeter when they see us really respecting them in the true sense of the word. Hindi yung lip service respect,
Yes.
pero yung alam nila na we are deferring to their leadership. Alam nila na pag may decision sila, kahit na parang in our minds, we don't want it, pero we express to them that, you know what, I trust you. You may be seeing something that I don't see, and so I will subscribe to your leadership. Kung pumalpak yung desisyon nila, hindi natin inanag. But instead, we will affirm our husbands na, you know what, let's pray about it. We can work this out. That's difficult because we feel, especially if you are somebody, I mean, like me, I was really very self-reliant before I met my husband. I was a working woman and everything. But the thing that I learned about submission is that in marriage, um, you cannot, parang you cannot work separately anymore eh. Kasi kaya nga, di ba, two become one. And the picture that I see when we talk about submission is really the picture of a bird. And there's actually this Hebrew word called kenegdo, okay, to mean like that kind of partnership, as if the wings on a bird. A bird cannot fly if one wing is shorter than the other, right? So when we say that we're submitting to our husbands, it doesn't mean we're lower or we're lesser. But the truth is, it's actually, God is actually acknowledging that we are equal with our husbands because He created us, male and female. He created both of us, but we're not the same. And so there needs to be that mutual submission. A lot of people think that submission is just, the wife lang will submit to the husband. Actually, no, it's a mutual submission because our husbands are submitting to the Lord, diba? And then he needs to love us. And loving us, it also involves that level of self-sacrifice. On our part, respecting our husbands involves a certain level of shedding our, self-centeredness. And so the only way for us to really, harmoniously flap our wings together is to correspond to each other, though we are not identical, parang wings of a bird, both are useful for flight, hindi siya identical, and yet it's corresponding to each other. And when the wings are used together, it accomplishes a purpose. So it's like the mirror image in marriage. So your husband is your, in a way, your mirror image, in the sense that you're not the same, and yet you need each other to make it work.
Mm.
And that's why when I look at submission, I don't see it as sinasubjugate ako. No, it's a relationship of harmony. In fact, yung poem na binigay ng husband ko sa akin before we got married, it's also what's in our wedding invitation.
Oh.
It's actually a picture of a bird. And I didn't realize na the Lord was actually showing me what it is to be married through that poem that my, back then hindi ko pa pala siya boyfriend noon, naliligaw pa lang. He gave me
Oh.
the poem. And can I read it for
Yes,
the
please, for the
for
podcast. Yes,
the podcast
listeners.
listeners? Okay, so this is my husband's then suitor's poem for me. Sabi ni Mang, let these our hearts be given a chance to gaze about. Perhaps there might be a better half of wing to match, so that high above we soar, as high as any wings can take, and even higher where the right pair of wings should take. If perchance destiny pairs us, together our wings will take, the two become one. Together we flap in unison, then we soar beyond wings can take, to horizons far beyond, under the shadow of his wings, till death do us part.
Wow.
Yun. So,
So, nanliligaw
that
pa lang siya doon, tapos sabi niya na, till death do us part. Wow.
Oo, that's his idea
Wow.
of us being together, that we are like a bird. Na pag pinagsama ni God, we can soar together. And little did I know that that is actually the Hebrew word nga, yung kenegdo. That's the Hebrew word for what would perfectly describe a marriage. Um,
That's so
and
beautiful.
so
Thank you for sharing
submission,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Pero alam mo, I mean, practically speaking, Noves, I'm not gonna tell you na it's easy to submit all the time. Okay, I'll be
Yes.
honest. That's the romantic side of it, but it's not always easy to submit.
Yeah.
Aminado din naman ako doon. But like you said, every time I choose to submit to my husband, there is a reward. There is blessing in
Yes.
it.
That's really nice. Thank you for sharing that. Kasi, eto, at least may clarity sila because we are very matriarchal country.
Mm-mm.
And one way or another, we have that kind of picture, di ba, growing up. Parang iniisip na, yun nga, ina-under mo yung asawa mo, yung mga ganong mindset. Hindi talaga. We have the same, I think, personality of a husband.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also very opinionated in my own,
Mm-mm.
strong, but I'm so glad my husband is more stronger than me. But at the end, what I love what you shared about mirroring. The way you treat
Mm-mm.
your husband or vice versa, the way they treat us is
Mm-mm.
that's how the output will we become, eh, 'di ba?
Right.
As a person, as an individual.
That's true.
And for us, the kids will be able to see that kind of treatment that we do to each other,
Right.
whether we like it or not. And we cannot fake that, no? Kahit na ano pang ituro mo diyan, napakagandang curriculum, bumili ka sa States, kung ano-ano. But if you have
Yes.
a not so healthy marriage, it's going to be very, very, not beneficial for your life, no?
Right.
It's hard to move on that end kasi you are setting the atmosphere, you are setting that kind of harmony. And when your kids see that there's a safe environment between the two of you as husband and wife, definitely it will be more easier for us to be able to communicate to our kids because they know that they are safe. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
this is my question, no? In a practical sense, no? At least na stage natin yon. You talk about faith and you talk about submission. But then again, yung sinasabi mo kanina, there are not so good days. So,
Right.
in one way, in managing, like in a practical way, can you give us a gist
Mm-mm.
on how do it looks like, especially no mga times na siyempre ngayon medyo na build mo na yung rhythm, na build mo na yung habits and character ng mga anak mo. But yung nagsa-start ka pa lang at hindi pa masyado nag-agree 100% si Mang.
Mm-mm.
And then,
Mm-mm.
there were times na talagang, how do you connect that? How do you manage being a wife and then to your kids, being available to your kids
Mm-mm.
then emotionally,
Mm-mm.
physically, spiritually. So, how does it look like in a day for you, Grace?
Okay. I'll take off from my sharing with you about the word kenegdo, yung Hebrew word kenegdo, which actually ang
Okay.
meaning talaga ng word na kenegdo is completer, complement, or perfect partner.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
what you said also about the husband and wife's relationship as a very good foundation in homeschooling, right? Because the truth is, there are more difficult days than easy days in homeschooling.
Agree.
Homeschooling is difficult, but it's doable. Okay? It is not a walk in the park. It's not a path strewn with roses. Kahit ano pa yung nakikita natin sa Instagram na magagandang photos, I am sorry to say there are more non-Instagrammable moments
Ah, yes.
than there are, right? And
Totally
so
agree.
and so I really value my partner. I really value Mang's partnership in our homeschool because there were days when naging fight club yung homeschool session and he comes in and pulls us back all of us and declares no classes, canceled na
Ang
ang
galing.
class.
No classes. I like that.
Canceled na muna ang class. Nung time na yon pre-pandemic, okay, let's all hop on the car and let's go to the mall. Let's cool ourselves or let's go to the park or let's do something else. Okay, kids, you stay, or sometimes he would do this. Okay, kids, you stay home. I'll take mama out. I'll take her for a while, for a walk. Ganyan.
Wow.
Um, and I recognize that it's because my partner in life is also my partner in homeschooling the children. And he knows me so well and he knows our kids very well that he knows when to help us cool things down. He is a thermostat, not a thermometer. Di ba? Magkaiba yun eh. Ang thermometer,
Yes, yes.
mini-measure lang niya yung temperature in the house. A thermostat controls the atmosphere, right?
Mm.
And I see my husband to be like that. The other thing that happens, parang, okay, you talked about challenges also. One of the things that was really challenging for me was when I started looking sideways, looking at other homeschooling families.
Oh.
Diba? I learned the term social media envy from our dear friend Donna Pangilinan Simpao. We were talking to each other a few days ago, and we were confessing to each other. Every once in a while we all fall into that no trap of social media envy when you start looking at the other homeschool family and I wish I were like that, or I wish my kids were like this, or I wish my homeschool setup is like this, or and so on and so forth. In the moment you start comparing, you rob yourself of joy. And the moment joy dissipates from the homeschool, things go downhill. That's guaranteed. But I realized looking back, the days when we really enjoyed our homeschool moments, the days when we just flourished in the lesson or the moment, the learning moment, were those days when I was just simply appreciating my children for who they were, embracing the season that God has given us, being content with the resources that God allowed us to have, and not wanting for more. Um, and being thankful. Gratitude has an enormous influence in the way we homeschool. There's power in gratitude. In the moment we started being thankful that we are like this is our style of homeschooling, and we've learned to embrace it, mas lalo naming na-enjoy. We started to enjoy each other. We started to laugh more. We were not pressured to keep up to a certain standard. I began to see that my children are really unique individuals. And as they grew older, they're now teenagers, each one of them developed their own conviction of learning. And when you ask them why they're studying, it's amazing what they'll tell you. My son would always say, I'm studying not for grades. I'm studying because I want to learn about the world, because there's so much out there that needs to be learned.
Yeah.
And it's just the love of learning that's in them.
Mm.
It's not because they have to maintain a certain status or they want to be on top, or not
Yeah.
like that. It's really, I want to learn this, mom. I want to learn this. Ako na nga minsan yung umaawat na parang tama na, balance, don't read into the night. Minsan umaabot ng 3 o'clock nagbabasa. Don't read into the night, or researching galore ganyan on the internet, because they just want to learn. But again, no, before we reach that point, the difficult days were real. Iyakan. May iyakan talaga yan. I don't want to homeschool anymore. I want another mama. May mga ganyan. Oo. Pagka ganun, talagang iiyak ka din. I could not count the many times I just go to the toilet and cry, or I would just stop the homeschool session, and I would tell them, kids, we're not seeing each other eye to eye. Let's take a break. I want you to take a break. I'll also take a break. I don't want to be shouting at you. I don't want you to be crying over this. And let's take a break. And I would lock myself in the toilet and cry out to God. I'm like, God, help! Hindi ko kayang gawin to. Paano na bang gagawin ko dito? Ganyan. And those are real days. The other thing din na naalala ko, Novs, yung time na yun is, I so badly wanted to become a purist. Gusto ko maging pure Charlotte Mason, or gusto ko maging pure classical. Kasi na-encounter ko
Oh.
sila, inaaral ko yung iba't ibang homeschool approaches, no? Tapos I really liked it, ganyan. So, pag gawin natin yan. I got the materials, bought the whatever, downloaded all kinds of stuff. And then it wasn't working with my kids. I had to come to grips with that. And I had to accept it, that it was just how the way it is. And that God has a different path for my kids and for me. There was even a time when I was really having difficulty, okay? And I was ready to throw in the towel. I remember 2 times yan na talagang hirap na hirap ako. And susuko na ako. The first one was when they were in their older elementary days. And I told my mom, sabi ko, Ma, next year, balik na natin sa regular school. And my husband was like, oh, you think about it first. Kasi, it was very clear. Yan yung purpose ng my partner kay. So, it was very clear to us when the Lord led us to homeschool. So let's pray about it. Let's think about it. Pero ako, out of my, emotional state, like, wala na, ayoko na, ganyan. And then my mom said, konti na lang. Konting-konti na lang. Tiyagain mo na, sabi ng mami ko. And my mom is an educator also, teacher din ng nanay ko.
Uh-huh.
But now, na-realize niya, homeschooling is doing her grandchildren well. So sabi niya, they're doing so well, thriving so well in homeschooling. Tiyagain mo, konti na lang. And right about the same time, the Lord led me to a verse that says, the Lord will teach your children and will grant you peace, will grant the children peace. That's in Isaiah 53, no? Na the Lord will be the one who will teach your children. So parang for me, na-realize ko, hindi ako mag-isa. I'm not the only person teaching my children. At the end of the day, the Lord is teaching my children. And there's the second time that was really, really difficult. Ito na yung teens na sila. Iba na naman kasi yung season. Teenagers na eh, di ba? Sumasagot na rin. And tinuruan mo naman din sila maging critical thinkers, di ba? So, hindi na sila yung basta lang gagawin lahat ng sinasabi mo. But they will reason and say, why? Why do I need to do this? Can you explain to me why? And sometimes you are at your wit's end and you just want them to just do as you say. But when I prayed about it, the Lord impressed in my heart in the middle of my praying and crying out to Him. And the Lord just revealed to my heart na parang, I have a plan for your children and you're getting in the way of it. That was like a major wake-up call. How can I be getting in the way of your plan, Lord, when, di ba nga, kaya tayo nag-homeschool, I'm following you when decided to homeschool, and how can I be getting in the way of your plans? And the Lord showed me na it's because I've been pushing for my agenda all the time, pushing for my
Mm.
agenda, and not really listening to the children, not recognizing where they are at in
Yeah.
their own life journey, forgetting to see them as whole persons,
Yeah.
and forgetting that God had already mapped out a blueprint for them. And I
Yes.
need to be in step with what God has planned for each of my kids.
Wow, Grace, ang dami mo na na-share and it's a really meaty conversation for you. Thank you so much for imparting your journey. I know it's, you know, telling those stories sometimes, 'di ba? Sometimes it's not easy, but it's really a blessing for me. It's a refresher for me and also for our listeners and viewers. But ayoko naman din, no, kulang tong podcast natin, tong YouTube podcast natin sa mga stories that you're gonna tell. So, I just want lang, no, them to be interested in what you do, specifically with the book, and I'm so excited to have one as well. So, can you share to us? Kaya nga, I was really, nung nakita ko yung kay Ate Donna with our Facebook, I'm not sure
Mm-mm.
what account is that, but anyway,
Sa HOP.
sa HOP ba yun? Oo. So,
Oo,
check
sa Homeschoolers of the
HOP.
Philippines. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes. I was really so excited. Nako, and one of the things that Chinky and I really love to do is to empower authors like you because we need to have more. 'Di ba, Grace?
Right.
Kasi specifically, ang dami nating mga international resources. But I think this is the time that God has given us. And I do believe in this pandemic, madami ang nag-pivot, no? And one of the things that we want, even with this small seed, that it could be, a platform for others as well. We are
Mm-hmm.
willing to share that. And I'm so excited for that, Grace. So please share to us your book and your activities, my dear.
Okay. Thanks, Novi, for having me. It has been an adventurous journey for me. I've had a lot, like you mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of roles. I've been an educator, a learning coach, a homeschool consultant, and an author nga, of these two books. I Married an Alien. Yung latest ko, it's I Married an Alien. And the first one is um, True Love Weds. So these two books are actually embodying my journey as a wife and as a mother also. So this these two books, I Married an Alien and True Love Weds, they were published by CSM Publishing. Okay. I remember sharing the stage with your husband, Sir Chinky, no, dun sa pinakahuling Manila International Book Fair that we've had, no. So this book, I Married an Alien, is actually about cross-cultural marriage. So the quirks of a cross-cultural marriage. It's like a sequel to the first one. True Love Weds, When the Waiting is Over, is actually our love story ni Mang, and like how it helped me maintain my resolve of seeking God's will in finding or waiting for my lifetime partner. And then what it means naman to be married to a foreigner or to somebody from a different culture. That's why it's called I Married an Alien. Kasi legally in the Philippines, foreigners are called aliens sa immigration. Kaya I married an
Oo nga,
alien.
bakit nga gano'n?
Well,
Pareho
alien
tayo
kasi,
actually, pareho tayo that we married
really?
an alien because Chink is Taiwanese. But he grew up
Oh,
here.
okay.
He
I
was raised,
see.
mas Pilipino pa siya akin, mas magaling pa siya mag-Pilipino kaysa akin. So, Chink is so fluent in Mandarin, Hokkien, and that's why. But,
Right.
sinasabi nga niya, mas Pilipino pa ako sa iyo. But anyway, so may
Kaya
ACR din si
pala.
Mang, no? May ACR din si Mang.
Yes, yes. Oo. And those things are things I talked about here in this book. So this is kaya nga ang subtitle is The Quirks of a Cross-Cultural Marriage. So when you get a copy of this book, like if you are engaged to a foreigner or if you're already in a marriage with a foreigner, you will actually gain insights, practical insights also. And biblical insights from this book because it also talks about the legalities of being married to a foreigner if you're living here in our country. It talks about like if you're about to get married. It talks about the preparations. How do you prepare, considering that you're honoring two cultures, and also once you're married, yung the day in and day out adjustments na the reality kasi is this is how I've done it from where I came from. And the realization that you are right, he is also right, there's probably none of you is wrong, but it's just different because you're coming from different cultures. And how do you adjust to that? And of course yung raising children. That's also a major component of marriage. Now, how do you raise your kids? Whose culture are you going to follow in raising the kids? And are you going to raise the children your way or his way, with his cultural traditions or yours, mga ganon. Uh, In-laws, issues with your in-laws also. And of course, finances. I know that this is your specialty ni Chinky, no? Kayong dalawa yung finances, yung kasi coming from different cultures, you would also have different financial traditions. And then I think that my favorite part of this book is yung last chapter, which talks about making your own traditions as a family. So very very practical because I really looked back to our 17 years of marriage and what we've learned along the way. I remember one time we realized nung nag-iisip na kami na, uy, in a few decades, we will be retiring. And we realized, saan tayo magre-retire? Yung mga ganon. Sabi ko, wow, those are practical things that,
Yeah.
When you're star-crossed lovers, when you're romantically involved, sometimes you don't see those things pag bata ka pa. But when you're
Totoo.
already in the marriage, you start thinking of those practical things. So they're all here in this book. They're all
Yeah.
here in this book. And I would strongly recommend this to those who are thinking of getting married to a foreigner or to somebody from a if it's a cross-cultural relationship. And then
Yes.
you
Thank
also
you for
mentioned,
doing those books, ha? Importante yan. Sometimes nane-neglect natin yung ganong area. But totoo yun. So, nakalagay din yung legalities. That's really
yes,
good.
yes.
O,
Because
kasi,
a lot of Filipinas are not aware that
oo
there are
nga.
so many
Tayo pa
documents
naman.
on.
Napaka-complicated ng ating sorry. I just have to say that it's the truth. It's hard. So, you have to pay annually. You have to, mga ganon.
Right. And
You
you
have
have
to
to know the
renew.
different kinds of visas
Yes, galing.
for your spouse.
Nako.
So I talked about those things here.
Thank you so much for doing that, Grace. But then
Oh,
again,
kasi
you're a host. Yeah.
wala kaming naging guide noon. So,
Oo nga, dapat lang may ganun, no? Dapat nga, no? Thank you so much for that. But then again, I'm also interested with your arrows and quivers. So,
Oh,
ano bang
yes.
ginagawa ng Arrows and Quivers? Saka, paano ba nag-start ang Arrows and Quivers, Grace?
Wow, Novi. I think the story of Arrows and Quivers has to take another podcast.
Oo nga. So, gawin mo na
But
lang ng
it
teaser. Iklian mo na
Oo,
lang.
teaser. O, sige. But this is, Arrows and Quivers really is a result of our journey as a homeschooling family and our desire to really support other homeschoolers, especially when we came home na to Davao. Yon. And one of the ways that we do that is by doing this. We have what we call the Quivers Academy, which is a year-long parent training program. Okay, Arrows and Quivers is a name that came from Psalm 127, verses 3 to 5, that talks of children like arrows in the hands of a warrior. And blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. So we thought, you cannot just help children in homeschooling. You also have to be there for the parents who are the main educators of the children. And so they are the quivers. If the quivers are not nourished, if the quiver has holes, how can has the quiver is tattered? How can the quiver shelter the arrows, and how can the arrows be straight and sharp, right, if the quivers are not also cared for? And so we came up with our Quivers Academy. So we have this, and we train our parents with homeschool foundations and mga seminars and equipping opportunities. And if they want to know more about our programs at Arrows and Quivers Homeschool, we are a DepEd recognized, DepEd accredited homeschool provider, and we service homeschooling families. Our main approach to homeschooling is really developmentally appropriate, eclectic homeschooling. Sorry, eclectic homeschooling. But we are open to all kinds of homeschoolers who would like to be part of our community. And if they're interested, they can just come to us through our FB page, Arrows and Quivers Homeschool. We have an IG account. Instagram account is arrows underscore and underscore quivers. We have a website as well, arrowsandquivershomeschool.com, and all the details about us are there. And of course, they can reach out to us anytime, and would be happy to help them navigate their way through homeschooling. We are on, I mean, the school year has begun, but we're still here. We're very much open to whoever wants to join us and be part of the community, as well as, if they need assistance, if they need help, we're here. We're here for them. Sa FB page
Wow.
namin, Noves, just to
Yeah.
also, marami na rin kaming resources na nilagay doon. There are a lot of homeschooling resources and videos that they can watch. So anytime, we're not going to take down those videos. They're really equipping videos on the FB page. They can just go there and tune in anytime.
Yes. Thank you for what you're doing, Grace. Thank you for Arrows and Quivers. Totoo yun, no? Sometimes we are always trying to check the mark where our kids gonna hit, but we need to take care of the quivers, no?
Right,
Para align talaga kung saan
right.
talaga magmamark. I like all your courses there, especially the emotional classes. That's really good.
Yes.
Yes. And the other one, nakalimutan, medyo mabilis mong binabasa ko pa kanina. But
I
anyway, thank you for all those classes. Nako, if you go to Arrows and Quivers, madami na kayong makukuha talagang, wow, talagang busog na busog kayo. Kung meron lang Arrows and Quivers 15 years ago on my time, siguro yung sanity ko mas naging maayos bilang isang homeschooler. But yeah, thank you
agree.
so much, Grace. Thank you so much for, your heart to be able to equip homeschoolers not only on how to homeschool but really in life. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Being
you.
a
And
parent, being an individual, and
yes.
I know it's not an easy
And as a
journey.
wife, Novi.
Yes, and
Yes, and as a wife.
definitely as a wife. Yun nga, thank
Right.
you so much for sharing your life to us. Please check out Grace and Arrows and Quivers and try to join there. Ay, hindi ko lang, alam mo ngayon ko lang nalaman na provider ka. Hindi ko alam yun.
Oh, that was a recent blessing from the Lord because of the
Oh.
the Lord eventually led us to become a provider. By the way, Novs, I also want to inform your viewers and your listeners that I constantly put material about about parenting and about being a wife and mom and about homeschooling on my FB page called Grace Days.
Yon.
Okay, so they can also visit Grace Days for encouragement and some ideas there, and also my vlog Grace Days on the YouTube channel. But right now it's kind of inactive because I'm focusing on other things. But there are some materials there that could actually encourage them and help them. And the other one of the things pala na I don't want to miss out is mommies, even if you're so busy, make time to have a date with your husbands. That's part of what makes marriage and homeschooling joyful, when you spend time with your husband.
Thank you so much. Tatanungin ko pa naman sa'yo, what are your last words? Yun na pala yung last words mo.
Ayun na pala, oo, yun na yun.
But thank you so much. Well, I really highly recommend Arrows and Quivers with Grace. Tunay nga po, no? I'm excited to also to get to know her better. But I do believe she really walks her talk. Maraming salamat, Grace. Tunay nga po, no, in homeschooling, no, it's really an extension of parenting. And hindi lang po talaga dapat nakafocus tayo sa homeschooling. But that's why in iHomeschool PH, lagi lang po nating tatandaan that relationship is more important than academics. Ako po si Novi Antan, your homeschool coach, and I homeschool. Thank you so much, Grace.
Daghang
Okay,
salamat.
bye. Bye.
Bye.